take a look at this for a second, folks. This guy Gordon Campbell, he used to be the premier of BC. He was the liberal head of the province, and since resigned from the party, he denounces that the Liberals have gone too far under Justin Trudeau. He has now resigned from it. He wrote this op-ed, which is why he was featured on the CBC. He wrote this op-ed in the Vancouver Sun saying it's time for accountability. This election calls for a cleared eye review of the past decade. Canadians have weathered a storm of incompetence from a federal government fueled by wishful thinking and willful blindness for a decade. And this was published April 16th, so this was going into the two debates that we recently had, the English and French debates. So this is going into the debates saying that regardless of who gets elected, regardless if it's Carney, if it's Polyev, if it's Jagmeet Singh, if it's Blanchette, even if it's the Green Party by a long shot, this is about accountability. This is about accountability of who's in power, who's in charge, and how are they going to fix the disaster that Canadians have been dealing with for over a decade. For over a decade. So it goes on to say, I'm going to read some of this before we get into his comments on the CBC here. The shock of current events seem to have stunned Canadians. We may not know what's coming next, but we do know what came before. Canadians have weathered a storm of incompetence from a federal government fueled by wishful thinking and willful blindness for a decade. The unpredictability of the last few weeks called for the cleared eye review of the evidence and renewal of confidence in Canada based on our history, the power of the Canadian imagination, and a return to economic reason. Clearly, we cannot afford another term of Liberal government no matter who the leader is. We cannot afford to lock our energy resources away as Mark Carney has promised. We cannot lose any more time in getting our mineral resources to the marketplace. We cannot afford suspend our critical thinking and fall prey to the magical thinking that represents the Liberal campaign in this election. Taxing more, playing games with the books, and reinforcing the status quo will weaken Canada and make us more vulnerable to the predatory actions of an uninformed U.S. president. And I would even add to that it's not only going to lean us towards possibly the U.S. president, but a lot more to the globalist domination that's already taken over us, which is why we're in the situation that we're in right now. Because Justin Trudeau, and now with Mark Carney, the whole reason we're in this mess is because they are deliberately trying to diminish the national sovereignty of Canada to sell us off to the globalist agenda, to sell us off to WEF, to sell us off to multinational corporations. Because to them, Canada's not a country. Canada is just an asset. They can go in, sweep things out, liquidate all of our most important assets, the vital assets that keep this country afloat, sell it off in a hot fire sale, and just have nothing to do with us. And that's exactly what's happening. Assuring we can only sell our valuable energy sources in the United States at a discount may help the U.S. economy, but make no mistake, it hurts Canada. It makes us more dependent on the United States, not less. Carney's commitment to maintain the bureaucratic nightmare that is Bill C-69 and Bill C-48 blocks our energy opportunity away for generations. His willingness to give provinces a veto over national important projects serves only to divide Canada. Canada's future requirement unequivocal action and Canada Drive. No party should have a veto over Canada's national interest that truly reaches for our national vision that optimizes the Canadian spirit and charter. Blocking the development of our natural resources is not a plan for pragmatics. It is wrong for Canadians and damages Canada's future. When Carney says he will keep Bill C-69 and Bill C-48, he is capulating the U.S. President Donald Trump's agenda, not building a more independent Canada. So those two bills, as many people are aware, those are the bills that are blocking the exportation of Albertan oil and natural gas and resources from that province to go across Canada to sell off to other markets, including our market. And as I stated before, because I know many people, this has become a controversial subject over many, many years because a lot of people don't want the pipelines. They know that it leaks sometimes, and I understand that. And I understand the environmental impact that imposes. I'm environmentalist. I would like to think that, uh, as a supporter of nature, a supporter of that we have to understand and come to conclusion that even with or without this pipeline, they're still getting fossil fuels from other countries. They're still getting fossil fuels elsewhere. So this magical idea that we're going to eliminate the need of oil and natural gas is not going to happen. Is not going to happen. And just it's astonishing, and it just makes me stir crazy to think that it's more environmentally friendly to them to forbid pipelines that just go across province to province, instead getting fossil fuels from other countries, getting them onto boats, chartering those boats through the ocean, and then putting them on tanker trucks, and then having those trucks sent to the markets. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. You're adding more in pollutants. You're adding more emissions to the general atmosphere in that sense. So why are we not able to send our resources and send it off to the rest of Canada so we can use our resources and make the country actually beneficial for the general public? That's the way I see it. When we keep our minerals and energies locked away, we lock our future away and lock away opportunity for generations of Canadians. That's wrong. I'm not young anymore, but when I was, I could think about buying a house. Young people today know that politicians may claim to care about affordable housing, but they only add costs on housing, take more taxes out of people's paychecks. That makes housing less affordable. Anyone benefits Everyone benefits from a strong economy, but more taxes, more regulation, manipulation of the books, and larger bureaucracy, all proposed by Carney, are the same old liberal gang, mean more of the same results, less opportunity, less resilience, and reduced confidence and smaller paychecks. So I like that he adds in that everyone benefits from a strong economy. And that's why it's so vital to focus the attention on economic issues, because economic issues impact everybody. And I know that it's political game. It's very common, especially in liberal grounds, to only focus on identity, to focus on LGBTQ issues, to focus on transgender rights, what bathrooms to use, who can play in what sports. I know that's the game. And yeah, you can have a discussion about that. You can go into detail about that. But the reason they put that at a higher stance than the economy is done purposely. That's to further divide people so that when everyone's arguing about which bathroom to use, no one's focused on the true pain and suffering that's going to affect everybody. And they forcefully and do it intentionally to stop the economy from growing, the prosperity of Canada, which is hurting Canadians. Not by Donald Trump, by our leadership. This is all done by the federal government. Donald Trump had nothing to do with this. This is way before even Trump's time. That they had this all intact to go against Canadians, to go against working class Canadians. And sadly, the younger people are feeling the crunch. So he wrote this article in Vancouver Sun, which is why he was featured on the CBC here, with Rosemary Barton. Now, you know that Rosemary Barton and much of the CBC is very much on the side of Carney. I know they had some little hits here and there where they tried to look like they were criticizing him, look like they were going after him. But we know for a fact that the CBC, because they keep bringing up the fact that, oh, Pierre Poilievre is going to cut our budget. Oh my God, Pierre Poilievre is going to defund the CBC. Hold your smokes. Hold your smokes, because you actually look into it. That's not what Pierre Poilievre is doing. When you actually look into it, it's more about scrutinizing the fact that your bosses, CEOs at the CBC, embezzled money illegally. And we're going to put an end to that. We're going to put an end to the embezzlement of CBC CEOs taking away that hard-earned money that was supposed to go towards the people that are running the CBC. That's one of the big things. That's something that I would agree with. And the fact that CBC is tanking is more on the fact that they're not committed to their audience anymore. They sold themselves out intentionally. So here is Gordon Campbell going on to the CBC because they want to interview him about this op-ed here from the Vancouver Sun. And he's going to school Rosemary Barton of why what they're doing at the CBC is so divisive and why it's so focused to put the economic side at a higher priority than going through the motions of the identity politics. And he's about to school the CBC with this. Take a listen.
Together.
You don't, in your op-ed, Mr. Campbell, endorse Pierre Poilievre. You don't mention him at all, actually. But I would imagine that is your choice, is it? Why did you not mention him in your op-ed, or are you still thinking about where your support should go?
So this is the little gotcha that they're trying to do here. They're trying to bring him on and then to say, well, you didn't mention Pierre Poilievre in your article, but it sounds like you're going to support for him. Because anything that goes against Carney, anything that goes against liberals automatically means you're conservative. Automatically, you're the other. This is how tribalistic this has become. This is why we see feuds on the streets. This is why Mark Carney rallies turn into these, street fights, if you will. Because everyone's so tribed up about if you're one of us or you're one of them. Not to forget that, Canada has 5 political parties. 6 if you count the People's Party. There is that too. And there's other little parties that are also a part of this. We do have a democracy, as many people have been brainwashed to think otherwise.
No, I'm not thinking about where my support should go. I think we should hold governments to account.
Yeah.
The Liberal decade was a dismal decade for Canada. Their immigration policies hurt every one of our cities. They made our housing problem worse. They made our healthcare problem worse. They made our educational problems worse. We have to hold governments to account. One person does not a government make. I wouldn't count on the federal government delivering and executing a program anytime as long as it's the same group that's been there the last 10 years. They've been incompetent and they've led us down the wrong road. I'm not saying they weren't well-intended. Yeah. They just didn't do the job. They have to do the job, not just for me and my generation. We've been taken care of pretty well. But I'll tell you, my grandkids deserve to have a government that's thinking about them, not thinking about debt, not thinking about expediently taking care of this group or that group. How are we building the future for Canada? That's what I'm voting for, and I think that Mr. Poilievre has the platform that will get us there.
Former BC Premier.
So he's thinking about the future generations. Well, we see a lot of the Mark Carney rallies featuring many older adults. That's just observation. That's what you see in the lines there. There's a lot of older generations. Not many young people are interested in a central banker that came out of nowhere. But what he's saying there is, and what I think I would like to highlight in this, is the fact that he's saying that we should be holding account to whatever government's in place. Yes, he may be leaning more onto Pierre Poilievre, but as I take it, and what you should be taking, is that regardless of who's in office, always hold them to account. Do not put your eggs all into one basket. Do not think that whatever leader is in your tribe is the savant that's going to usher you to presence, to usher you to the healthy future. That you should always hold these people accountable. Because eventually they're going to crack, they're going to cave, they're going to go towards corruption or do something that disagrees with the base. I mean, look at what happened with Donald Trump. He had a huge mandate by the MAGA people, by a huge swath of Americans to stop the wars, no taxing on tips, to bring back free speech. And look what he's doing now. He's adding more wars on. He's now reversing his pledge to stop the war in Ukraine. He's reversing that. And he's cracking down on people criticizing about Israel's genocide. People that are going against genocide are being cracked down on the streets. That's nothing nothing though any person voted for. But he's doing it on behest of APEC, of Mira Madelson, and anyone that buys him out. Just like here in Canada, anyone that buys out our politicians are going to serve them and not us. So they're doing the job correctly. If you think of it that way, they're doing the job correctly by serving their overlord masters and screwing us, because that's the whole intention there. But to add to this, and this is why he brings in young people, because this is more about the future, more about future generations, and considering the fact that a lot of young Canadians, this is interesting. I want to bring this up. This is from a place called The Hub, and they wrote this. It says Canadian youth are among the unhappiest in the G7. In the group of 7 nations, Canadian youth are the unhappiest of all the other nations. And it says over the last decade, young Canadians have reported the second largest decline in life satisfaction in the group of 7 nations. Canadians under 30 are now among the least happy of their G7 peers. The drop in reported happiness among Canadians has contributed to the Canada's overall decline in life satisfaction since 2013. We were the 4th or 5th happiest in 2012. 4th or 5th happiest. We were on the top 10. Now we're down to what, 36, I do believe? Or maybe it's even lower now. We dropped dramatically over the many years of Justin Trudeau, over the many years of this globalization of Canada, making a post-national state. We have made it worse for Canadians. And the younger generation that's coming into this world, that are now young adults that are trying to make a living and raise a family, they're feeling the worst of the punch. And that's why you don't see a lot of them at a Mark Carney rally. Just saying. Canadian happiness, which has seen a steady decline since 2017 in particular, has fallen the second most only to the United States within the G7. According for all age groups, Canada ranked as the 15th happiest in the country in the world, and the happiest in G7 for 2023. However, if one excludes older Canadians, life satisfaction score falls to second last in the G7 and below countries like Mexico and Saudi Arabia. So if you don't count the retirees, if you don't count the people that are just watching the CBC aimlessly, with no critical thoughts, we're screwed. Think of that. And now you know why certain rallies, you look at the Mark Carney rallies, a lot of older generation, a lot of people now flipping the finger instead of giving the elbows up. That's apparently the new thing now. Just not giving a damn and being totally arrogant and ignorant to the younger generation. Because they're blinded by this. They don't report this. They're not going to tell you this on the CBC. But this is proven fact. Compared to other G7 nations, we are doing terrible. We are doing terrible. Because no one can afford shelter. No one can get especially younger generations, cannot even imagine to afford a house or even rent an apartment. It's just the cost of living is a burden, and we are just making it worse in this country. Overall satisfaction, overall life expectancy, overall just generalization of Canada is plummeting. And here's a chart of it just to show people changes in happiness score of G7 population. So there's Canada, the dark red there. And look how it's just went down from around 2017, 2018. Just going down, down, down. Compared to all the other nations. And it's dropping drastically over time. And that's why this Gordon Campbell guy, who used to be a liberal, used to be the Premier of BC, wrote an op-ed and had to school had to school the CBC anchors about the overall worry about this election as far beyond just play of words and slogans and identity politics and who can take on Trump. It's about who can actually make Canada strive for future generations. Because that's a big deal. That's a big deal. These are now the younger generation that is going to have to cater and look after this nation as the older generations perish. If we're going to make it worse for them, Canada is not going to survive. And that is troublesome. That's why this is such a big deal. That's why so many younger people are now doing a TikTok trend. We showed at the when we did our debate coverage. They're doing the TikTok trend, demanding their parents to vote conservative over on the economy. They're now couldn't care less about identity politics because they know that as they graduate and go into the workforce or go, into university or college or try to make something of themselves, they know that they're going to get screwed. They know what's ahead, and it's dark, it's dastardly, and they need a way out. This country needs a way out. Otherwise, it is just going to be an absolute hell, which is what the globalist agenda wants. These international conglomeracies want Canada to fail so that they could take over it. So, everyone's worried about Trump taking over. I'm more worried about a darker presence that's already taken this country by storm. And we better do something about it before it's absolutely too late.